Hello and welcome to yesterday's Airlines. It is time for yet another new mold sample review. In fact, two mold sample reviews, as you can see, because I have received both the Boeing 747-8I and the 8 Freighter from ngmodels using their new castings. Now, we've known for a while that these models were in development. I think it was probably early last year that a photograph was published showing these alongside the Tu-154s at the time. So it's not a big surprise that they have appeared. It's taken probably a little bit longer than a lot of people thought, but obviously in between the photograph and now, there have been a selection of other molds that have come out, that whole series of A320s, for example, and obviously the 154s. So it's been a while. It's been a bit of a wait for the first jumbos since the SPs. And I know a lot of people are really excited that this means there will be 747 Classics coming soon. I don't know whether there will or not. NG have previously said they're making those Classics, but they haven't shown a lot of interest in getting them released. They clearly don't appear to be a big priority for them. And if anything, the fact that they've released the 8 first illustrates that point even more, because clearly, obviously, it is the most modern version. So it does seem that classic molds and classic models are a lot less important to NG than they were. They certainly haven't been using the 747 SP mold as I would like, but putting all that aside, in this video we're going to have a look at these new 747s, and I have to say that, as you would expect from NG really, there is a lot to like with these molds. But of course, they're not perfect, nothing ever is, and there's definitely some things which can be modified. So in this video, we're going to take a look in some detail at the 8i and the 8F here and see what I think and what can be changed. Obviously, this is a companion to the written reviews, which have already been published at yesterday's airlines.com. So please check out those reviews. They contain a lot of photographs and a lot of detail and a lot of stuff I'm going to cover in this video. Also, subscribe to the channel and follow me at Instagram and on Facebook at Yesterday Airlines. NG and I have got a really good relationship, and they do send me through a lot of cool things like this. And I've also got good relationships with other brands like Aviation 400 and jcwings and others. And so I get a lot of cool stuff and some things like these exclusively before others. So check out the channels. You won't be disappointed. But now let's get in and have a look at these two new sample molds. And we'll begin with the passenger version, the 747-8i. So not long ago, I invested in a turntable, and this is the first opportunity I've had to use it alongside a new mold sample. So here is the 8i here going around the turntable, and as you can see, in general, it looks like a great 747 already. Obviously, the 747-8 Intercontinental was not an enormous seller for Boeing. It's really come at the end of the age of 4-engine passenger airliners, for long haul at least, and it sold very poorly, partly because of various economic situations, as the A380s found, partly because airlines prefer frequency over capacity, and partly because of the big twin competition in terms of the 777, 787 and the A350. But nonetheless, it is a lovely looking aircraft, as all 747s are. The proportions are a little bit funny, I find, with the extended stretched hump. It's not quite, in my universe, as attractive as the Series 400, but looks really good nonetheless. And now we've had this guy going around the turntable for a few seconds. Let's get him off the turntable and check him out a bit closer up to the camera. Okay, so in close up here, we've got the 8i again, and I'll just bring the sample side on here. Obviously, the nose shape and form is an area of much discussion and contention amongst collectors, and it probably always will with 747s. It is quite a difficult nose to get right, it seems. And there has been quite a bit of discussion around the NG-SP, which has a really good nose, but a nose which people still don't consider necessarily to be 100% accurate. I would say that this nose is quite similar. It might not be exactly the same, but it's very similar to the SPs. It still looks really, really good. But there are some things here which are, I think, incorrect, and mainly they relate to printing rather than the actual nose shape itself. When I compare this to a 747-8, then I think that this nose shape stands up quite nicely and looks pretty good. But you've got to say that even though the number of windows here is correct, there can be up to 14 ahead of the first door. They are too close to the radome here, and this needs to be moved back, or the proportions need to be changed somewhat. In addition, the line here is not, or at least it's kind of sloping downwards. It should be going up. You can see perhaps more clearly when you see more of the line that it appears to be drooping down. This, I think, should be higher, so it should be coming across up there just above the nose cone, and this last window should be up here somewhere. So that is something which should hopefully be nice and easy to change on this mold. I should also say that the cockpit windows here are a cause of some concern, both in terms of the shape and also their position. Again, I think that they're too low down. They kind of accentuate the cockpit forehead here area by being a bit too low, and I think that they could easily be moved up slightly and it'll look better. But regardless of those things, the general shape of the nose is something I think looks pretty good. You could perhaps argue this tip could be a little bit rounder, it's maybe a little bit blunt there, but it's pretty minor, and actually that looks a bit better on the freighter version anyway. In terms of the nose gear, I think that looks good as well. You've got pretty much the same sort of nose gear as you had on the SP. Nice detailing. Obviously rolling gears. Not that I really care about rolling gears, but generally I think that you're looking good here across the top. And I have to say the hump of this 747 looks really nice. It is a really good angle, no problems there. Moving to the middle of the aircraft, I think this is one of the real strong points. And this is an area actually it bears quite a close resemblance to the JC Gemini mold, in that you've got this really nicely squared off wing join fairing area here with some really nice sculpting of that fairing into the fuselage, and that looks hyper accurate with the real thing. And this is an area where the competing Phoenix mold really sucks. You've got in the Phoenix, you've got a big round join which doesn't look at all like the real thing. So this is an area which is definitely superior on this mold. It's no better than what's on the JC and Gemini because they've got a very good fairing here too, but it looks really good nonetheless. Moving to the engines, and I think the detailing here is admirable as well. I think the shape is good. You've got some really nice chevrons at the back and obviously the larger piece underneath. You've got more chevrons on the hot exhaust sections there, and some really good pylon work here with some really nice shaping, and it's quite square here, which is perfect and looks really good. So that's all very nice as well, and it holds the model, holds the engine, sorry, well, even though the undercarriage isn't enormously long, it actually keeps it well off the ground. Now, if we move to look at the engines from the front, then there's some really, really exquisite fan detailing going on here. These are not see-through engines, though. These are... Oh, I thought they were solid. Actually, they do look like they spin. Shows that I'm paying attention, Richard. They do spin, but they don't look very solid. I didn't realise that. There we go. You learned something new. I thought these were solid and not spinning, but they actually are spinning, which is wonderful. Not that I really care about spinning fan blades, I have to say, but they do spin. Huh, interesting. Okay, that's all great. The engines actually look really nice. They've got some lovely detail, and they do spin those fan blades. But one thing I did notice is that the fan blades are the wrong way round. The fans should be oriented the opposite direction. It should be quite a simple change, I'd like to think. It's something that has previously been changed on one of the other samples, so it should be modifiable here too, no problems. So I think as a package, this area around the wing roots and the engines is great. If we turn it over, you can see that these belly intakes here are also molded in quite nicely here, which they weren't on the SP. So that's a nice thing as well. And looking at the main gear, you can see that I lost a wheel. It came off, so ignore that. But in general, the undercarriage looks good, high quality. One thing though that this undercarriage doesn't have is the pivoting tilting effect, which is generally quite common on most 747. So these are static, the trucks, they don't move, but that's it's a nice feature to have. But at the same time, the aircraft is going to be static most of the time. It's not a play model, this is a static model. So does that bother me? Yeah, no, not really. Moving to the actual wing itself. And there's a really good structure here. You can see you've got some really good detailing on the flaps and the slats. These nice flat track fairings. And this one is correctly slightly smaller than this one in terms of its movement beyond the wing rear edge. And then you've got some really nice detailing on the wing and a good shape up to these unusual winglets. And if we move across and turn over to the other side, something which I hope you can see, it's perhaps a little difficult to see, is that there is on this mold nicely captured the slight changing wing angle here, where it changes the angle slightly here and is slightly out. So that's something which you really can't see on the competing molds. So something nice capture there. Moving to the rear of the aircraft, and again, in general, I think this looks really nice. They've got a very nice rudder section here and a nice join. So you've still got the free rudder portion here at the back, but a really nice solid join as well, and some nice detailing up the rudder there. And that's something which Phoenix really struggle with. Their connection point for the tail comes all the way up to here, I think. So it's all this odd gap, which is completely inaccurate. Also, something which is great about the tail on this is this nice line down from the vertical stab to the fuselage here, which is a lot better formed and shaped than on the JC mold. So that, I think, is nice. An area I do think perhaps could do with a little bit of TLC is this APU. It's a little bit scrappy, a little bit poorly formed there. I think that maybe they could just have a look at tidying that up slightly. As you can see from the back, it looks a little bit asymmetric. So that's a minor point of modification, I think. But overall, you have to say that this mold looks really nice. So I'm just going to find the stand and slip her up onto that. So you can see it without my big fingers in the way. Let's get the camera to focus. There we go. And I think it looks like an excellent 747. So points to be modified, in my opinion, are the position of the window line, the position of the cockpit, so those are just printing issues, the orientation of the fan blades, and some tidying up at the rear of the APU there. But these are all relatively minor things. You could argue perhaps that the nose could be a little bit rounder here and that maybe the forehead angle is slightly different, but they're really small. Honestly don't bother me, and I probably wouldn't modify them myself if I were NG. But overall, I think this is a really nice mold and looks really good. So I'll just move it around a little bit so you can see. Again, if you didn't get a good view on the turntable. Overall, super nice, really nice. And I have to say, the 747-8i is never going to be a major component of my fleet, or anyone's, I guess, because there are so few in service. But I've got an Air China example from JC. I could be tempted. I've recently started branching out into A380s, so you never know, I could be tempted with 747-8s as well. But let's move the intercontinental aside for a second and take a look at the freighter version, which is obviously going to be the senior version here in terms of number of releases. So welcome back. In the second part of the video, we're going to take a look at the 747-8 freighter version, which you can see here going around on the turntable. The freighter obviously a lot more successful than the passenger version, but even so, the production run was still, no doubt, very disappointing for Boeing. I think there is only just over 100 or so aircraft made, so not that many at all. But the freighter, no doubt, has a long career ahead of it and is likely to be the primary recipient of new liveries, whereas I imagine most of those 8Is are just going to go straight to the scrapyard once they're done with Lufthansa and Korean and Air China. These freighters are not going to be passed down through operators for some time, which is means we're going to be seeing these probably at least into the 2050s, you'd think. Obviously, this sample shares pretty much all the features of the passenger version. The primary difference is obviously in the printing. There's a lot less, and the changes are the addition of printing for the nose cargo door and that large side cargo door. But outside of printing, the changes in form relate obviously to the hump, which is an area that's been of some contention between the existing molds. So let's get a closer look at this freighter sample and check her over. So here she is, up close and side on, just like I did for the passenger version. The first thing that's obvious is that the hump form here is really nice. It doesn't have that abrupt ending to it that the jcwings version has, where it just kind of ends in a really obvious end of the hump there. This one's got this nice grade down into the roofline. I think that looks really good. Overall, again, the nose section and the undercarriage things all look very nice as well. I do think, however, that on this version, it's more obvious, though, that the cockpit windows here are too low and not quite the right shape. They need to be moved up a bit. And I do think also that the nose cargo door here is a little bit small, and they could move this line back a bit in alignment with moving the cockpit up, and it would look better. In fact, I've mocked up an image of kind of what I think it probably should look like, and I think that those two changes do make it look better. But even without them, it still looks pretty decent, I'd say. Now, moving across the rest of the mold, it broadly looks the same as on the 8i. You get really nice wing fuselage join, excellent pylons, nice engines, complete with those spinning fan blades. I didn't realise span. It's just not something I ever check for. Spinning fan blades, such a waste of time. But really, nonetheless, they do, though they're a little bit reluctant to spin, I have to say. They do spin. Take my word for it. Such a pointless feature, but they look great. The fan blades are really nice, albeit oriented the wrong way. Underside, again, really nice. Got all the wheels on this one, and really good detailing across the wings, engines, flat track fairings. Very pleased with the way that has turned out. And again, the wing looks really good. With that slight change of angle, I think you can kind of see it a bit better there, just around here-ish, where it changes. So that looks really nice. They've got that spot on. Moving to the rear, you've obviously got this large side cargo door, got the printing for that, and I think that looks pretty good. And again, back up to the tail cone, which I do think, as I said before, the APU could do with a little bit of finessing, but broadly the tail join, the tail form, really very nice. So once again, we'll slip the freighter up onto the stand here. There is she, there she is. And get the camera to focus again, would be a good start. There we go. And again, I think that this is, even more obviously than the Intercontinental version, the best 747-8 in the scale. I'll probably do a video comparing it a little bit to the Gemini jcwings version in a minute, which is no slouch itself, to be honest. But Obviously, the hump form on this version is much better. I think the tail form is nicer as well. And across the board as a whole package, I think this one works really well. So I'm not saying, you know, get rid of all your existing 747-8s, but this one, I mean, obviously trounces the Phoenix version because it's got just a newer feel to it, a better selection of join areas around the vertical stab and the wing root. And I think that in detail, it probably beats the JC2, especially with the hump and the tail. So it's nice. It's really good. Let's just move it around a little bit. One last look there. Look particularly nice from the front. Really very good. Okay guys, well that's it for this quick look around these two 747-8 samples. I have to say that I think they look really nice. Minor modifications required, as I say, to the engines and the APUs and the print work, but broadly the molds themselves are good. I know it will never please everyone in terms of the nose shape, but I think this is substantially better than the majority of 747s on the market, even in that area. They make an excellent pair, and I'm sure they'll make some really nice models with them. So they're never going to be a big part of my collection, but I can't sit here and say that I think they're bad models, because I honestly don't think that they are. Hopefully you guys all think they're good as well and look forward to collecting these. I think the first release is scheduled to be announced in May, and it'll be interesting to see what NG produce. They haven't told me. I did suggest doing some retro fantasies. I particularly would like to see a Boeing and the delivery colors Pan Am, but I don't think those are likely to turn up. I'm not sure quite what they will do, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if it is a fantasy scheme, considering they've done that for the 777 and the A350. So we'll see. But thank you very much, ngmodels, for sending me through these mold samples. Thanks very much, everyone, for watching. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Keep an eye out on my channel for more content like this, and I'll see you next time. But that's it for now from Yesterday's Airlines.